Morning, everyone. I'm Clarence from EDB. Very honored to be here to do some sharing. Many of the points have been covered by our previous speakers, but maybe the brief that was given to me was to cover what is Singapore's digital strategy. But maybe a quick background. So we did a survey last year with one of the consultancies, and we found out that there were 20,000 finance professionals in the Fortune 500 equivalent companies here in Singapore. And that compares to 11,000 in Shanghai, 3,000 in Kuala Lumpur, and 8,000 in Hong Kong. So, there is a critical mass of HQs, and within that, some of the functions that are quite predominant here, we've realized is marketing, HR, and finance. So that goes to show, I think, the critical mass that we have here. In EDB's perspective, what are we trying to do with the HQs here? So apart from bringing in more greenfield HQs, we're actually quite interested to look at how we could shift many of these HQs towards more origination. And in order to do that, more origination transactions, international transactions taking place out of Singapore, it means that we need to have deeper functions here in terms of corporate capabilities. In the context of finance, this means that we need to have more treasuries, we need more of the fundraising to take place, more bond issuers, and so on. So that's one perspective that we take in terms of how we want to deepen the HQ functions here, because we think that as part of our home strategy, we need to anchor more innovation mandates, and definitely we want to see a lot more of the decision making take place out of Singapore. In terms of trends, you're familiar, growth of Asia, the center of gravity shifting over here. Some of the finer implications there would certainly be, obviously the emerging middle class. The other things that were raised related to regulations and risk management. I think these present opportunities as well in terms of how you go about managing your businesses, but also for professional services, which I look at. The other area which has been discussed and will continue to be discussed, today is about technology, obviously. Here, enough said, I think, in terms of AI, IoT. We will discuss a little bit more in terms of how we are going to, build capabilities around here in the next couple of slides. So with this as the backdrop, last year, we spent quite a lot of time in the government looking at the CFE. This is the Committee on Future Economy. There were a couple of subcommittees looking at areas ranging from corporate enterprise capabilities all the way to growth industries, to what we need to do with jobs and skills and so on. The one area that I would just highlight over there, number 4, is building strong digital capabilities, which I will go into some detail later. Mr. Patrick Tay mentioned about the ITMs, the industry transformation maps, of which, so this whole process of CFE led to the ITMs, where we are developing 23 ITMs for sectors. But if I were to just distill this and simplify it for you, I think it means that there is a change in terms of our approach, in terms of transform and create. Transform in the sense that we need to be restructuring some parts of our industries. And for you guys, it means obviously some parts of your business, your service lines need to be restructured, need to be transformed because of the disruption. And the other key word is create. We are obviously focusing a lot more on how we can be creating new businesses, new services, solutions out of Singapore. And you have obviously a very important role to play there as well. So let me shift gears into talking about what we are trying to do in terms of our digital roadmap. This is a survey that was done by the Fletcher School of Tufts University. It just shows on the y-axis how countries scored, in terms of digital evolution. On the x-axis, it looks at what it calls the momentum, which means how fast it's been changing in terms of digital evolution. You can see that, a couple of countries stand out. Singapore is one of those in the upper quadrant, which means that we've actually been evolving quite quickly over the years, but also at the same time, we rank quite high in terms of, 4 factors related to demand, supply, innovation capacity, and so on. So this is a slide that maybe, it's worth thinking a little bit about. In the center of this is how, in EDB, we look at digital talent. We think that ultimately, it's in the steady state, it's about multidisciplinary talent who need to, have the attributes of entrepreneurial, technical, as well as creative. In terms of the subsectors that we are trying to grow, they range all the way from digital infrastructure, to software, devices, media and entertainment, internet services, and so on. But there are 2 enabling capabilities there, which we'll cover a little bit: analytics and cybersecurity. So these are the building blocks that will allow us to create new digital services in Singapore. In terms of the areas that we want to focus on the right-hand side, you see 4 industries. Those will be industries where we think we'll be able to carve out a global niche, where we'll be able to project industry leadership by digitalizing fast enough and creating these digital services out of Singapore. These are advanced manufacturing, the consumer businesses, financial services, as well as what we term as hub services, which is a combination of logistics, professional services, wholesale trade, and so on. On the left-hand side, these are the sectors where we think that if we can accelerate digitalization, this will help us to restructure faster, but also at the same time, it can help us promote much more livability in Singapore. These are areas like public services, healthcare, transport and logistics, as well as housing. So there are 4 key pillars, we think, as we look at how we would want to build a much more vibrant digital ecosystem. These would include innovation, partnerships, talent, and infrastructure. Let me just highlight that on the left-hand side on innovation, it's not just about the tech companies, it's also about the startups, and we have done relatively well over the last couple of years. At the same time, we're working with many of your companies to also build more digital COEs in Singapore. But really the differentiating factor, we think, in terms of building this digital ecosystem would be about the partnerships. So, we are really working hard in terms of forging more open innovation, getting companies, both MNCs, SMEs, and startups to come together in terms of, creating a co-innovation together with our research institutes as well as our institutes of higher learning. Some aspects of how digital is being embodied and manifested. In terms of financial services, that MAS has, been aggressively pushing for fintech as part of our vision for Smart Financial Centre. Many of the areas they're looking at include, how we integrate APIs, how we can put in place regulatory sandboxes, so that some of these experiments can be done with some guidance from the MAS. On the right-hand side, these are just examples of companies that have therefore, rode on the bandwagon and therefore have decided to use Singapore as a hub for fintech innovation. Insurance companies like MetLife that are here with their Lumen Lab doing new business models. You have payments companies like Visa, which are doing hardcore blue sky research from Singapore in terms of payments. And also in health, in private wealth management, where they are developing new tools, new devices from Singapore. The other area that most of you have heard from PM Lee, in his National Day rally is Smart Nation. In terms of smart homes, you may be aware that in Yuhua, which is in the west, near Jurong, there is a pilot ongoing where 3,200 households now have certain devices which allow them to monitor their household utilities, and also at the same time, an elder management system where they can monitor some of their more senior citizens in terms of how they're doing. But that is just one area. The other area that we're really working hard on is data sharing. So a couple of years ago, the public sector came together. 70 agencies, came together to put their public data sets on a website called data.gov.sg. But we are trying to do more. And we think that the next step towards co-innovation and innovation partnerships that I mentioned just now is really about getting companies to aggregate data sets. So you'll be hearing a couple of pilots that will be coming up, but we really want to encourage companies to be looking at how they could be less. They think less about how valuable the data sets are themselves, but the fact that actually by sharing data sets, there could be a lot more data-driven innovation that can come out from that. And as I was just mentioning, some of the building blocks will certainly be in terms of analytics and cybersecurity. More and more companies are now, obviously realizing the fact that they need to have these capabilities in-house. For analytics, over the years, we've been putting in place different programs in our institutes of higher learning. We have also supported quite a number of innovation teams to look at analytics and so on. You would realize that professionals are also encouraged to go for upskilling under SkillsFuture. There are various training providers out there who are now providing all kinds of master classes from a few days to weeks, even months, looking at areas like coding, business analytics, and so on. But really, I think that in terms of the extension, it will be in terms of AI. And so the government newly launched a program called AI.sg. And rather than just focus on blue sky research, what's differentiating there is the fact that we will actually be launching 100 pilots. So these will be pilots where we would get companies to put forth their problem statements, and the public researchers will actually work together with companies on these problem statements so that we can have a couple of proof of concepts that will be out there. Cybersecurity, we have mentioned just now, how important it is. In terms of promoting research, the government is doing that. But we think that an area that Singapore should really focus on is cyber physical. So we are focusing quite a bit about how we can differentiate ourselves in areas like smart cities, critical mission infrastructure, and so on. So maybe just in ending, in terms of implications and what this means for all of you here in the crowd, certainly you play a very important role in helping your companies to restructure your businesses. So that's the piece in terms of transform. Digital is but one of the building blocks, but there will be, obviously many more challenges ahead in terms of how you go about, accelerating that transformation of your business. And the other piece is in terms of the role that you play in terms of catalyzing innovation and value creation as well. So we want to see that there would be more creation of new businesses and new service lines from Singapore. And we hope that you could support your business functions in doing that. So with that in mind, I thank you, and that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.